In my 50 years of vocational ministry, I've had a lot of highlights, but let me tell you one of the big ones. I had the privilege to minister with Derek Prince in South Africa. And while we were there, I remember he looked at me and he said, "Larry, I don't play the Holy Spirit, but I think you need to return here." I did. I took his advice. I came back. I spent 10 days there in ministry. And what I saw was a miracle unfold before my eyes. A country that was really a powder keg and ready to explode. It came to a place of supernatural unity. How did it happen? Watch this. I lived in the D.C. area for 24 years, and there's a university there. It's primarily a black university called Howard. Well, for commencement address, Joe Biden spoke there recently. And I don't know if you heard, but here's what he told the students.
The most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
Now, I've got to ask, and you should too, is white supremacists and supremacy really the greatest terrorist threat in the United States of America? When I hear statements like that, to me, it's completely contrary to what Jesus said. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." And when I hear somebody go to a primarily black university saying things like that, it's like, I don't think it's honest. I think it's creating discord. I believe it's stoking in people discontent and also bringing them to a place of anger about the country. And, you know, when we hear statements like that, now I know there are on the left and right minuscule groups. In fact, I believe more on the left where you have Antifa. They're more organized and larger. You've got some, you know, on the right where maybe they're white supremacists, but I've never met a white supremacist. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but what's the impression that Biden, you know, portrays to these students? Well, in a similar way, I would ask the same thing recently, because here in Tennessee, recently at Tennessee State University, Oprah Winfrey came and she spoke. Now, let me tell you first, when I was in South Africa, the nation was divided. It was ready to explode, even as I said. And you know, when I was there, I'll never forget, I watched an unfolding of an apartheid system where you had division and you had no even voting rights for blacks. But a man named Nelson Mandela, maybe you saw the movie years ago about Mandela. And what was it about? The Long Walk to Freedom. He was a Christian man. Now, he had his flaws, just like Martin Luther King and others. But you know what? He promoted racial reconciliation. He talked about unity. He said, we've got to come together. And instead of promoting discontent and anger and hatred, he stood for unity. Jesus said, a house divided against itself will not stand. And so this man stood for unity. Billy Graham did the same thing, one of my heroes. He said during the civil rights era, what did he do? He said, we are going to integrate. How about Martin Luther King Jr.? In my study, I only have one poster, and it's of Martin Luther King Jr. He's one of my heroes. That's why I've gone to Selma and Birmingham and Montgomery, and I want to learn the black experience. And I do all that I can to promote racial harmony and unity. Now, recently at Tennessee State University, a woman that has been an icon. She's one of the richest women in the world, probably worth $3 billion. She's the queen of media. She's one of the most influential women in the world. But when she got up to speak, and I say this, I admire her in so many ways, but here she is, and having the freedom, the opportunity to achieve in the United States. And she's persevered. And I applaud her and I pay tribute to her for that. But is this woke ideology infecting Oprah now, that all of a sudden she begins to badmouth America and blast America? And these are primarily black students there, and they're listening to her, and they form an impression about the United States. So while I commend her for so much in her influence, I also have to take issue with the things that she said. Watch what she said.
You witnessed the storming of the Capitol and the death of civility. You're acutely aware that voting rights are being gutted, women's rights are being dismantled, books are being banned, history is being rewritten, the Supreme Court is being corrupted, the debt ceiling is being held hostage, the climate is changing, the LGBTQ community, LGBT plus community is under attack.
Now, is she being honest? Does she really believe this? She said voting rights. What were they? I jotted them down. Voting rights are being gutted. Well, you know what? In the last midterms, we had unprecedented voting, the highest in history. The last presidential election, we had the highest voting in history. Now, there are people that say, like me and others, that say you should have voter ID. But is that accurate, what she's telling those students there? How about this one? She said, women's rights are being dismantled. I say, what women's rights is she talking about? Now, if she's addressing abortion rights, well, let me tell you this. The idea that an abortion should be on demand for any reason at any time, right up until the moment of birth, the majority, overwhelming of Americans say no to that. They say there should be restrictions. And when we talk about women's rights, what about the little baby, the little female woman? And how many of these women that have been aborted, 32 million probably right now, we say out of the 60, were females. Maybe the cure for cancer was there in a woman. Maybe the next female president was there. But is that accurate to portray that to the students there? Then she said also about books are being banned. What books is she talking about? Parents are speaking up today because of the propaganda. And you know, when you have Chelsea Clinton and Jill Biden saying that all books should be available and made available to students, parents are saying, no, I'm in charge, not the government or the public school system, and I don't want my children's innocence being robbed. What about this? Then she went on to say, history is being rewritten. What is she talking about? I don't know what is she talking about critical race theory? That's all that it is. And really, you can go through the points on that. We know that it was the Pilgrims and the Puritans, our founder that came to this country. And the idea that, well, you know, it was slaves that founded America. Folks, yeah, history's being rewritten when we're starting to say things that are contrary to our Judeo-Christian foundations and an accurate view of history. So, Oprah, I think you're off on that. How about this one? The Supreme Court is being corrupted. What is she talking about? Is it, again, Roe v. Wade? Well, it could be, because that was an accurate decision. And we do have conservatives, not activists, that want to rewrite, like we see today, the Constitution, and they want to stack the Supreme Court. But to make a blanket statement like that, and then to convey that to the students, corrupted, that's wrong. That's not fair. And that's really ungodly, I would submit. How about this one? Debt ceiling, we're being held hostage. What are we talking about, held hostage? We have a man in the White House that says there should be no limits to spending. $31 trillion debt right now. And I just heard it yesterday that if we continue on this trajectory in 10 years, we will be over $50 trillion in debt. We're mortgaging our children's future. You can't keep doing it. We teach people, our children, you have to live within your means. And this excessive, obscene spending, there's got to be limits on this, or our country is going to collapse. It's not just going to be recession, it could be a depression. Another thing, I say, Oprah, what are you talking about when you're saying climate? Well, climate, I've written on that, and I encourage you to Google some of this stuff that I've done on Al Gore's myth of climate change and all of this kind of stuff. But I would say, you know what? There are people that say, well, I'm privileged, I'm the elite. Oprah has, I think, 10 homes, the last I read. And currently, if I'm not mistaken, she has an $80 million home, 25,000 square feet. What is it, 40 acres? That's a pretty large footprint. What about the other homes? Something in Colorado, I don't know if she sold it, $90 million. These are large footprints, but what are we saying? That somehow the government is supposed to tell us, and there's the elitists, those that have a moral superiority, and they can do whatever they want? Again, I think what's being conveyed to the students? And then what's the last thing? She said, LGBTQ is under attack. What does she mean by that? I don't see that. I see rights and freedoms like never before. I remember years ago when it was like, hey, what a person does in their bedroom, leave us alone. All we want is to be able to come out of the closet. Well, now they're trying to put us in the closet. It used to be there was a gay pride day, then it was a gay pride week, then it's a gay pride month, and now it's parades and banners and flags and movies and wokeism infiltrating everything, and then propaganda in schools. We're seeing what's being taught. I just saw a book that's in the schools, over 1 million of them, and what's being taught to children. In Florida right now, you know, The NAACP says we're going to put out a travel advisory not to go there because it's a hostile climate. And they're saying this is, this is intolerance. Why? Because they voted and they have legislation now saying protect our children from gender mutilation surgery and propagandizing them in topics and putting them into drag shows and letting them be subject to things like that. No, parents are speaking up. I want to say this to us. Whether it's Oprah, Joe Biden, or others, there are race baiters. I'm not saying that Miss Oprah is, but I would say this. It's time to do like Nelson Mandela and Billy Graham and Martin Luther King Jr. and to be able to do what Jesus said. Be peacemakers. Preach the gospel, proclaim truth. In the book of Philippians, it says, if you bite and devour one another, take heed lest you'll be consumed by one another. This is not the approach. We need to promote peace by sharing the gospel and telling the truth and not stoking grievances, anger, discontent, especially in the next generation.
Hey friends, if you felt this video was helpful, make sure you like and subscribe so you get notified once new videos become available. Thanks.